You've probably seen your share of movies built around twists, i.e. they have stories that mainly exist to distract you from some fact about the characters or their world that's being held back from being revealed until the very end or at least the beginning of the third act that dramatically changes the context and meaning of what you'd assumed you'd been watching. Cabin in the Woods, directed by Cloverfield's Drew Goddard from a script by Joss Whedon and finally making it out to theaters despite having been shot nearly 3 years ago, is a movie built out of twists, where the story, tone, meaning, setting, and even genre of movie it actually is changes once every few minutes, and even sometimes in the course of a single scene, which you have likely guessed makes it really hard to review, because it's a really great film that everyone should absolutely run out and see as soon as they possibly can, but I can't tell you why, because that would spoil all the fun. On the other hand, I actually do have to review movies on this show, so here's the compromise. I am telling you right now in this 100% spoiler-free space that Cabin in the Woods is, as of right now, my favorite thing I have seen all year, will almost certainly wind up near the top of my best of 2012 list, and that you need to get this movie in front of your eyeballs immediately. In the next part of the review, i.e. after the traditional opening credits have rolled, I am going to review the movie in slightly more detail, which will include one fairly significant plot twist. But it is A, a plot twist that has already been spoiled by the film's trailer, and B, actually happens right at the beginning of the movie and isn't even close to the biggest surprise the film has in store. So, my advice would be that you
go see Cabin in the Woods
first. But if you really want to watch the rest of the review, I promise I'm not giving away the whole thing, though I can't promise that you might not wind up slightly more liable to guess what's going to happen. Okay? Okay. One more time, you have been warned. Cabin in the Woods, much like Inception, is a meta-narrative that's very much about the way story structure works. They are movies about making movies. But whereas Inception attempted to use its mostly serious science fiction setup about the methodology of technology to manipulate people's subconscious as a metaphor for director Christopher Nolan's approach to cinematic storytelling, Cabin is a horror movie that uses a mind-blowingly imaginative idea as a setup for commentary on how most other horror movies are not nearly as mind-blowing or imaginative. To wit, it has as its starting point one of the oldest and most hackneyed scenarios in the entire horror genre. 5 college students, a jock, a nerd, a good girl, a bad girl, and a comedy relief sidekick, head to a secluded cabin in the middle of nowhere for a weekend getaway, only to find themselves under siege by mysterious evil forces who, for the purposes of this review, will remain unidentified by me. Both the audience and some of the characters will immediately take note that everything about this setup sounds like something out of 1,000 other horror movies, and they also begin to notice that despite them actually being rather nuanced characters with complex depth in their real lives, once the scary goings-on kick in, they find themselves reflexively slipping more completely into the role of whichever cliché archetype they most resemble, and even begin making the bafflingly stupid decisions such characters tend to make in bad horror movies. Why is this happening? Well, as the film's trailer already more or less gave away and the actual movie gives away literally right off the bat, something else is going on. A mysterious and sinister someone is actually manipulating the situation, using high-tech surveillance and control equipment to, for lack of a better word, direct the good guys, the bad guys, and even the environment around them into acting out the motions of a formula horror movie. Who, why, how, and to what end this is all being done, you couldn't pay me to reveal here, but suffice it to say there are big ideas, but the true genius of Cabin in the Woods isn't how big its reveals are, but the way it uses them to keep making the film more interesting, more exciting, and more deliriously entertaining than it was before. As each new layer of what's going on here is peeled back, huge new possibilities for what could happen next come to light. And you know how some other lesser films might just cut to black or move on right after a big reveal, hoping that the audience will leave excited by all the questions it raises about what could happen? Well, okay, you know what? Perfect example of this. Remember that part in The Matrix Reloaded where Persephone takes the good guys on a boring walking tour of the Merovingians' fortress? Yes, I remember the names of the crappy supporting characters in the Matrix sequels. You got a problem with that? But you don't really notice it's boring at first because, hey, look, it's Monica Bellucci, and she makes it a really specific point to reveal that her and the Merovingians' hired muscle are these older rogue programs from the architect's second Matrix whose unique powers and features inspired Matrix World Humanity's Legends of Monsters, and the dialogue then makes it really clear that these guys are actually a bunch of werewolves and vampires and such, and you hear that and you think, oh man, Neo and them are gonna fight a bunch of freaking werewolves and vampires? That's gonna be awesome! But then when they fight them, it's just another bunch of people in late 90s clubwear doing wire fu, and the movie is like, yeah, we brought that monster stuff up, but we're not gonna do anything with it. That was bullcrap, right? This movie, on the other hand, does the exact opposite of bullcrap. When the full scope of what's going on and what could potentially be going on is revealed, Cabin in the Woods opts to keep the party going and cut right the hell loose. And as a result, it builds to what will probably end up being one of the best final acts of any movie ever. And in doing so, it still remembers to include a clever, smart, preposterously quotable screenplay performed by a stable of highly capable actors, including Chris Hemsworth, looking awkwardly younger than he did a year ago in Thor. Cabin in the Woods is a triumph of humor, horror, and expert filmmaking that specializes in throwing one thing I didn't realize I'd been waiting my whole life to see up on screen after another, and I can't recommend it highly enough. If you like horror movies, if you just like movies, hell, if you just like fun in general, do not miss Cabin in the Woods.
Yes, I don't know if this is in the upload schedule going to get uploaded before or after the Dark Shadows review, which comes with a similar caveat, which is I stand by this review. Other than that one, what I was standing by is that the movie is kind of average, but has cool parts to it, whereas this one I'm standing by the fact that I think the movie is really, really good. But the caveat in both of them is that obviously, if I was reviewing this new and fresh today, there would be some mention of the fact that one of the principal creative voices involved turned out to be a huge asshole, and I would have mentioned that, and that's really unfortunate, and that it does taint the enjoyment of an otherwise good movie that I like a lot for me. And that sucks, but it would suck more to ignore it and pretend that it's not there, in my opinion. And it would be disingenuous for me to, put this up and not at least mention, yeah, this is a great movie that I really like and I think holds up, and that I think does a lot of cool, smart things with itself. And also, fuck off Joss Whedon. Both things can be true. He can have been a talented writer who creatively contributed a lot of interesting things to the genre, and he can also be a scumbag who we don't need to have around in the industry being an abusive asshole. Both of those things can be true, and it's difficult it shouldn't be difficult to reconcile, but it can be difficult to want to hold those two ideas in their head, but it does no favors to be dishonest about it, to try to hide it one way or to try to fudge it in the other direction. Great movie. I think it's terrific. I think everyone gives a great performance. I think the directing from Drew Goddard, really solid. One of the guys involved on the creative end, piece of shit. Sometimes that happens. And you mark it, and you do what you will with it. And if that means that you say, well, I just can't in good conscience watch this movie, that's a choice you make. And it's valid. Other responses are valid too. And that's what I have to say about that.